please rise for the entrance of the veterans?
Good morning. Let's give all of our veterans of Vietnam War a great round of applause. You can all be seated for just a moment. I'd like to welcome everyone to Grove Chapel Church this morning. I'm Pastor Mason Phillips, and I just want to say it's a great, great honor to be able to do this here at Grove Chapel Church. This day is a day in which we honor our veterans, and we want to give them the highest amount of praise and the highest amount of thankfulness for the service in which you have given our country. I'd like to personally welcome you all here today, all the veterans, their families, and all of our distinguished guests. Please make yourselves at home and know that Grove Chapel supports you, appreciates you, and is here for you if you ever need anything at all. Today is all about recognizing the sacrifices many gave for their country and for the freedoms of us all today. Scripture actually teaches us that there is no higher sacrifice or action of love than for a man to lay down his life for another. It's the very theme in which we preach every Sunday, and I'm able to so freely do because of men like you who gave so much so that we could have freedom in this country. Romans chapter 5, verse 7 and 8 says, "For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet peradventure for a good man some would even dare to die. But God commendeth his love towards us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us." So I want to tell you all from the bottom of my heart this morning, thank you. Thank you for your service and the price you paid for our freedom. At this time, we're going to turn the service over to our Sheriff, David Gabriel, who's going to present the colors.
Will it please rise for the presentation of colors, followed by the national anthem by Ms. Madison Gabriel.
Left. Detail. Halt. Left. Face. Come. Present. On.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Shoulder on. Forward. March. Left. left, right, left.
And now join us for the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Stan Shaw. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we'll have the invocation by Reverend Jason Phillips.
Let's please all bow our heads in reverence. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we come before you today and we're so thankful for this opportunity you have given us to honor those who have so bravely given their lives and who have given a part of their lives, Lord, for the freedoms of this country. Lord, we still believe that we live in the greatest country that has ever been formed under your hand. Father, we ask you, Lord, to continue to bless this country. We ask you to bless our law enforcement. We ask you to bless our servicemen and women, Lord, as they travel, as they protect this country, keep them safe and bring them home to those who love them so much. Father, we ask your special hand of blessing and promise upon your people this morning. We thank you for this day. We ask for a special blessing to be upon it, and we give you all the praise and all the glory. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated.
I would like to welcome you all to the 50th Vietnam Veterans Commemoration Ceremony. I would also like to thank the brave veterans in attendance for their service and sacrifice, and remember those who lost their lives in the fight for American freedom. The Vietnam War in many ways defined an entire generation of Americans. The ground offensive officially began in March of 1965 with the deployment of 2,500 Marines. By Christmas of that year, nearly 200,000 American troops were in the country. More than 200,000 of Georgia's sons and daughters served in the military during the Vietnam War. 1,584 were killed in action. 8,534 were wounded in action. 21 were held as prisoners of war. 30 are still unaccounted for. By the end of the Vietnam War in April of 1975, nearly 3 million American servicemen and women had been on the ground, in the air, on the rivers, and at sea, serving our country within Vietnam's borders. Today, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs estimates that roughly 234,669 Vietnam veterans call Georgia home. The freedoms and liberties we are blessed to enjoy are a direct result of their courage, devotion, and sacrifice. We will continue to honor the legacy of service that they built today and every day hereafter. Again, I thank all those who served, who are in attendance, and I wish you all a meaningful commemoration ceremony today.
I'm United States Senator Johnny Isaacson of Georgia, and I'm delighted to join the people of Oglethorpe County to pay tribute to the commemoration of the 50th year of the Vietnam War. That was the war of my generation, one for which I have a lot of memories, one for which I have a lot of pride. God bless those soldiers who volunteered and sacrificed for our country at a difficult time. War that was unpopular with many, but a war that was successful by the United States of America to continue to represent freedom, liberty, and peace against totalitarianism and communism. I'm delighted to join the people of Oglethorpe County and salute the soldiers and the families who supported those soldiers in the Vietnam War and the Vietnam conflict. Thank you for your service to your country. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Nine million Americans served during the period of the Vietnam War. They represented 10% of their generation. 6 million of them were volunteers. They were the oldest and best educated force America ever sent into harm's way. 97% would be honorably discharged. And today, the vast majority of them testify with their actions and their words that they are proud of their service and would serve again if called. November 14th, 1965, 10:48 a.m. Elements of the 7th Cavalry touched down at landing zone X-ray. Within 30 minutes, the Battle of the Ia Drang began, the first major battle fought by the American Army in Vietnam. Over 3 harrowing days, vastly outnumbered American forces would hold out and ultimately repel enemy forces. American forces would never lose a major engagement during the ensuing 8 years of combat operations. Known as the Wall, the Vietnam Memorial stands in honor of those who served in the Vietnam War. The names of the men and women who gave their lives are inscribed in the order they were taken from us. 58,286 names. The youngest was Marine Private First Class Dan Bullock at 15 years of age, and the oldest was Navy Petty Officer First Class Kenneth Taylor at 62. There are 3 sets of fathers and sons, 1 set of stepbrothers, 39 pairs of brothers, 8 women, 16 clergy, and 155 Medal of Honor recipients. And let us not forget, there are still more than 1,600 missing and unaccounted for personnel. The French were in Vietnam before the Americans and lost more than 70,000 lives. More than 400,000 Allied troops served with the American forces. Joining as allies with the United States were the Republic of Korea, Thailand, the Republic of the Philippines, Australia, and New Zealand. These allies suffered more than 5,000 lives lost during the course of the war. American combat forces left Vietnam in 1973. 2 years later, Saigon fell. Over those last 2 years, without American and Allied combat forces in the region, casualties in Southeast Asia were double what they had been during the 10 years prior. To our Vietnam veterans who answered the nation's call to serve, we thank you. Your greatness is etched in history from the battlefields of Southeast Asia to the neighborhoods of hometown America, where you continue to bring blessings and inspiration to your families and your country today. To the families of our Vietnam veterans, we thank you for the greatness of your support, sacrifice, vigilance, and compassion. And to our allies who stood by us 50 years ago, we thank you. The greatness that was earned by this generation never left you, and it never will.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Ware. I'm the chairman of the Oglethorpe County Republican Party. I really want to thank every one of y'all for coming this morning. Thanks to the veterans. Thank you to their guests. And I also would like to thank our committee who put this together. They won't like this, but this is Diane Fields, did a phenomenal job. Dwayne Ramey, on video in the back, did a great job. And we do thank y'all for all your hard work. At this time, I would like to introduce to you our congressman from the 10th District, Jody Heiss, who has a few words to say.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and let me just say Thank you to Grove Chapel and Pastor Jason. Thank you so much for having us, and the members here at the church for having the insight to recognize and honor our veterans. To Kathy and to Mike and so many who have been a part of this and other ceremonies like this, a huge thank you. To the family members and guests, as Kathy mentioned, thank you for your support of this day. But most of all to you veterans, there is no way to adequately say to you thank you for what you have done for every one of us in this room and in this state and in this country. And from a heartfelt spirit of gratitude, we say thank you and God bless you. Every one of you are heroes, and we are deeply appreciative. I remember as a young boy praying for you in Vietnam every night. Our family would get together. My parents would have a time of reading the scriptures, and then as a family, we would get on our knees every night. And I don't recall there ever being a time that we didn't pray for you every night of my childhood, for you serving in Vietnam. And to be able to stand before you today, face to face, and say thank you is a great, great honor. I don't think there's any group of people in our country who deserve red carpet treatment more than the veterans of the United States military. And so to you today, please accept this small expression coming from an extremely grateful country to say to you thank you. Job well done. We're proud of you, and we're honored to be able to serve and acknowledge, recognize you and your acts of heroism today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your continued service in your communities, in your families, and in our state, and for what you have done forever. We say thank you, and I'm honored to be with you here today.
I would also like to welcome Representative Trey Rhodes, who has a few words to say.
Good morning. I just want to say to you, I'm honored to be here in your presence, and it couldn't have been said any better than Congressman Heiss just said it. I kind of knew what I was going to say, but I've got a lump in my throat right now. I've got few regrets in my life, but one regret that I do have, and I will have to the day I stop breathing, is I didn't get to serve my country. Both of my granddads did. My father was one of you, and I just don't think there's any way words can express my gratitude personally to you. You symbolize everything that our country is and stands for. And I just want to say thank you.
And from the Georgia Department of Veteran Services, let me introduce to you Commissioner Mike Roby.
Thank you, Kathy. Congressman Heiss, it's always a pleasure. Him and I have been together at many of these events. Representative Rhodes, Pastor Jason, and the big guy standing to our right, Sheriff. Well, nobody's going to get away with anything as long as the Sheriff's standing here, so thank you, Sheriff. And our veterans, thank you. This is all about you. Now, I've got a quick joke I normally tell. I spent 23 years in the Army, and I'm a retired Sergeant Major. Brian says I can get away with this joke because I know we don't have any generals in the audience. So I'm going to tell this joke. I know we got a couple colonels, but we don't have any generals. You have an aircraft that's fixing to go down, and you have 5 people on board, but you only have 4 parachutes. So the first gentleman says, I'm a family man, I can't die, so he goes. Second gentleman says, I'm a businessman, I can't die, so he goes. The third gentleman says, I'm a general, I'm smart, I can't die, so he goes. I'm going to use the fourth gentleman as a sergeant major, and I'm going to use the last gentleman as a young private. So the sergeant major looks at the young private and he says, son, I'm fixing to retire after 30 years in the United States Army. I want you to take that last chute and you go. young private looks up to Sergeant Major and he says, "Sergeant Major, that smart general grabbed my rucksack. We both got to shoot. Let's go." Now, on a serious note, in life, there's never a wrong time, nor is it ever too late to say thank you. So today, it's an honor for me to stand here before you to help the state of Georgia honor you and your fellow Vietnam veterans who served our country some 4 decades ago. The Georgia Department of Veterans Service, in partnership with the Office of Governor Nathan Deal, created the Vietnam War Certificate of Honor program to achieve a goal that is simple: a way to show appreciation and gratitude for your military service and your personal sacrifice to our nation. To say thank you for answering the call to duty, and for most of you facing the danger of a foreign and unfamiliar enemy, putting your life on the line for our country in a fight for the liberties and democracy of another. And in return, you and your fellow Vietnam veterans were in far too many cases never given a simple but important acknowledgement for your military service. Instead, many of you were forgotten, ignored, and ridiculed. And what made this even worse, it was done by your fellow Americans. As a nation, we have learned from our mistakes. Today, we treat all those who serve with the respect and gratitude that they are due. But as we remember those serving today, we must never forget those who served before. And we must continue to strive to correct the wrongs of the past and always seek to do better. So today, we say thank you to you and your Vietnam brethren. To each of you here today, welcome home. As we continue to observe the 50th anniversary commemoration of the Vietnam War, it is our hope to eventually recognize every one of the 234,000 Vietnam veterans living in Georgia with this certificate of honor under the signature of Governor Nathan Deal. Thank you for allowing us, the state of Georgia, and the Georgia Department of Veterans Service to do just that. God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless the United States of America.
Dennis Helmrich will now read the salute to the Vietnam Veterans Proclamation. Yes, sir.
And now a proclamation by the Governor of the State of Georgia. Vietnam Veterans Day. America's involvement in Vietnam began in June 1954 with military advisors, escalated into 11 years of military combat involving more than 3 million servicemen and servicewomen, and officially ended on May 15, 1975 with a joint special operations squadron rescuing the crew of the U.S. merchant ship Maguez on the island of Koh Tang near Cambodia. And whereas more than 228,000 of Georgia's bravest sons and daughters wore the uniforms of our nation's armed forces during this most turbulent time in U.S. history, enduring the war's unpopularity and risking their lives fighting for the democracy of a foreign country. We reflect on the life-changing combat wounds of some 8,500 Georgians, the hardship endured by the 21 Georgians held as prisoners of war, and the suffering and sacrifice felt by the families of 30 Georgians still missing in action. And whereas, since their unveiling, Vietnam War memorials across the country and here at our state capitol have helped heal a nation deeply divided by paying eternal tribute to the 58,286 American servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam. Of the names listed on the Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C., 1,584 are from the state of Georgia. And whereas 12 Georgia Vietnam veterans were awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest distinction that can be bestowed by the President of the United States in the name of the U.S. Congress for conspicuous gallantry and intrepid actions as they risked their lives and went above and beyond the call of duty. And whereas on Vietnam Veterans Day, we remember and appreciate with grateful hearts the contributions of the 234,000 Vietnam veterans now living in Georgia, as well as the extraordinary bravery of all of Georgia's veterans through centuries. And whereas Vietnam Veterans Day affords us the opportunity to recall with pride and gratitude the selfless military service, patriotism, battle courage, and personal sacrifice of these service men and women who answer their country's call to duty to fight for another nation's peace and democracy. Now therefore, I, Nathan Deal, Governor of the state of Georgia, do hereby proclaim March 29, 2017 as Vietnam Veterans Day in Georgia and invite all citizens, both in public ceremonies and in private thoughts and prayers, to gratefully acknowledge our Vietnam veterans. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the Executive Department to be affixed this 27th day of March in the year of our Lord 2017. Nathan Deal, our Governor and Vietnam veteran.
Veterans, we will now begin the ceremony for you to receive your lapel pins and your certificates. The state of Georgia hereby salutes for honorable service during the Vietnam War. Marine Corps Sergeant Charlie Joel Arnold. Air Force Sergeant Doyle Lance Ash. Navy Officer, Petty Officer, 3rd Class, Wayne R. Bruno. Army Major, John Hamilton Buckman, III.
He's in a hurry.
Air Force Captain William Marion Cathens. Air Force Technical Sergeant Jones Edward Compton. Army Specialist 5, Harold M. Duncan. Navy Petty Officer, 1st Class, James Gerald Gotti. Army Captain Thomas Gardner Harris, Jr. Reserve and Guard Sergeant First Class Donald R. Harrison. Army Specialist 5 Thomas L. Hogan.
With me.
Navy Seaman Teddy Laverne Hughes. Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Edwin Lamar Houston. Coast Guard Fireman First Class William Claude Jackson. Navy Captain Robert Cecil Johnson, Jr. Marine Corps Sergeant James Douglas Kilpatrick. Navy Seaman William Alvin Matthews. Army Captain Bryant D. Miller. Navy Airman First Class Ralph W. Nunn, Sr.
Ralph said we could take his picture, but it better not show up in the post office.
Air Force Sergeant Billy U. Ogle. Navy Chief Petty Officer Michael Alexander O'Neill. Army Specialist 5 Anthony Michael Pritchett. Army Specialist 4 Gregory Lloyd Rose. Army Specialist 5 Stanley Earl Shaw. Marine Corps Sergeant John Sohai. Army Specialist 4, Alfred DeWitt Strong. Army Specialist 4, Larry Tucker. Navy Lieutenant Michael Lynn Vetter. Army Private E2 Isom Neil Weems II. Navy Petty Officer 3rd Class Alice Venetia Williamson. Air Force Sergeant James William Wills. Marine Corps Sergeant James Michael Woods. Navy Petty Officer 1st Class Ralph Charles Wood. Navy Petty Officer 1st Class Donald R. Wright.
He's still leaning mean, fitting his uniform.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, are there any other Vietnam veterans in the audience that we have not recognized?
The names were not called. If you're in the audience and your name was not called, please step forward.
Thank you.
Yes. They got something. Okay. The sheriff will tell us. Okay. And whatever he says. We're going to play the song from each branch of the military. Veterans, when you hear your song, please stand up and join in.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Veterans, heroes of the Vietnam War, thank you. However, joining y'all today are very special guests that were not recognized with a certificate and a pin. And it's very important that this group does get their recognition. They need this recognition, they deserve this recognition, they earn this recognition because of the love that they showed to you. We like to call them the Love Support Group. Guys, when you raised your hand and took the oath of office to defend the Constitution of the United States, the U.S. government supplied you with a lot of things. They gave you clothes to wear. They gave you a bed to sleep in. They fed you 3 meals a day. And when you went to combat, they gave you the weapons, the ammo to go along with it. The one thing they didn't give you, a lot of first sergeants thought they could give you that, thought they did give you that. No, this came from home. This came from places just like here in Oglethorpe County and all across the state of Georgia. This came in a letter that was sent to you when mail call came in the afternoon, when your name was called, that you received every day. This came in a little brown box, or a box wrapped in brown paper. They contained cookies and cakes and all the comfort items from your home. That's the love that the U.S. government couldn't give you. And they're with you today. And they need to be recognized. The mothers, the wives, the sons, the daughters, the granddaughters that supported you here at home while you were defending the United States of America. With that being said, I would like for you, please, to stand up and give these beautiful people a big round of applause. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to mention a few people that are with me today from the Georgia Department of Veteran Service. First, you just heard from him, that's Brian Zarang. Brian was promoted recently. He now serves as our Director of Public Information, but he's still going to continue to oversee this program. And I can tell you, without Brian Zarang, this program would not exist. So Brian, thank you, young man, for all that you do. Also with me today is Dale Bale. Dale, stand up. Dale is our North Georgia Regional Director. A lot of you know Dale from the Athens office. That's where he continues to have a little bit of space to park his laptop and his rear end from time to time. But I keep him on the move. He has 29 of the 52 field offices that we have here in Georgia, so he stays hopping. So Dale, thank you for being here. Ron works out of our Athens office with Ramona Roper, and Ron does a great job, so he's out of our Athens office, so thank you, Ron. And last but not least, he's our newest addition. I call him Rudy Poot because he's still learning, but he does a great job. He's a retired senior NCO from the United States Army, and that's Steve Bain. Steve, stand up, brother. He does a great job. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we have a very special individual, and I'm sure anyone that lives in Oglethorpe County and reads the Oglethorpe Echo knows the individual I'm about to talk about. He's not a Vietnam veteran. However, he wrote in his time about a lot of you guys, heroes. The late Commissioner Pete Wheeler was a resident of this county, Oglethorpe County. He was commissioner for over 54 years of the Georgia Department of Veterans Service before turning over the helm to Commissioner Roby. Commissioner Wheeler used to get the Echo delivered to Atlanta every week, faithfully. And when the Echo left out this gentleman's column that was written every week, he would get on the phone, he would call the Echo, the publisher, and say, "What's going on? You left my favorite columnist out of the paper this week." So at this time, we would like to call to the front Dr. Ted Ridgeway.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, veterans, distinguished guests, it is now my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Ted Ridgeway. In 2005, Jim Kiney, World War II veteran, and Ted Ridgeway, Korean War veteran, started the Thanks for Our Freedom celebration. The first one was held in Pittard Park in Winterville, Georgia on Veterans Day. Money was raised by Jim and Ted for the meal served free to all veterans, their spouses, and active duty military. 4 years later, Thanks for Our Freedom celebration was changed to the Saturday before Memorial Day. The Winterville United Methodist Church took over the celebration when Jim and Ted were no longer able to do so. A series of articles based on interviews by Ted with combat veterans of conflicts and wars were published in the Oglethorpe Echo. And I'll add to what was just said, when I got the Echo, that was the first place I turned to find Ted's articles. And I was pleased to be able to buy the book that has those compiled. And if you can find one, I encourage you to get one yourself because you'll enjoy it. But at any rate, Ted compiled these articles into a book entitled Combat and After, so future generations would know the true story of veterans and the after effects some suffered as a result of combat. Ted was responsible for getting Highway 22 in Georgia, in Oglethorpe County, designated Veterans Memorial Highway. Ted is medically retired from the Air Force as a result of the injuries he received in Korea. He loves God, his family, and this country, and this county. He reminds everyone that freedom is not free. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ted Ridgeway.
And at this time, the state of Georgia, Department of Veterans Service, and the Veterans Service Board awards this Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Ted Ridgeway, Air Force and Korean War veteran, in recognition of the many great things you have and continue to do for the military, veterans, and families in Oglethorpe County. We recognize and commend your thousands of volunteer hours through active participation in veteran recognition programs and activities. Thank you for your compassion and patriotism. Signed, Mike Roby, Commissioner, Georgia Department of Veterans Service.
He said thank you, he appreciates it.
Man, would you like to say something? Would you like to say a few words?
Pardon?
Would you like to say something?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you so much for this recognition. As most of you know, Ted has Alzheimer's now. And one of the things that he's lost is the ability to write, which I never thought would happen, and his ability to communicate vocally. Sometimes words just don't come out right. But Ted's a unique individual. He served with the Merchant Marine when he was 15 years old in 1945. He went back to high school, came out, joined the Navy, got out, joined the Air Force, and the Air Force loaned him to the Army. So he's experienced a little bit of all of it. But he always says he's redneck. Of his attitude about his country and his flag. You know, he just can't tolerate anybody that disrespects it.
Amen.
Amen to
No, I'm not. Am I doing the table?
No.
Are we going to play the song? No? Okay. Well, it's already been said time and time again here, so I'm not going to take a lot of it. The governor in his remarks, commissioner in his, and Congressman Heiss. At this time, as we honor and celebrate the heroes in their honorable service, we must never forget those 1,584 native Georgians that paid the ultimate sacrifice, that did not return home to their loved ones. More importantly, ladies and gentlemen, let us never forget that today, August the 19th, 2017, across this country, there are over 1,600 Americans who somewhere in Southeast Asia are still unaccounted for, listed missing in action by the Department of Defense. Their loved ones suffered from the day of incident that they were reported missing, and today they still suffer knowing where they are and whether they'll ever be found or returned home to their country. Of the 1,700, 30 native Georgians are amongst those. So 30, the family members, Georgians, of 30 native Georgians today are suffering, wondering whether their loved one, the remains, will ever be found and returned home. So let's never forget that. And with that, we have this moment of remembrance.
Thank you. We now pay tribute and honor to those who are POWs and MIAs. This table that stands before you is a place of honor. We acknowledge those missing from our celebration today, and we remember them. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing purity of intention in responding to the nation's calls to arms. Remember. The chair is empty, for they are not here. Remember. The wine glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us this day. Remember. slice of lemon, reminding us of their bitter suffering. Remember. The grains of salt, representing the countless tears of the families. Remember. The single red rose, reminding us of loved ones who keep the faith, awaiting their return. Remember. The red ribbon represents the love of our country, which inspired them to answer our nation's call. Remember. The burning candle and yellow ribbon, symbolizing everlasting hope of a reunion with the missing. Remember. Remember all who have served alongside them. We who have donned the same proud uniforms, being sworn to the same faith and allegiance, we will never forget their sacrifice. Remember. Remember until the day they return home. Please rise.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our ceremony. If our guests would like to go across to the fellowship hall for refreshments, and our veterans, we will take some pictures. Yes, sir.
I would like to make a point here.
Yes, sir.
In 1959 and 1975, 58,478, veterans have died. People know that from 1975 to 1979, just 4 years after the Vietnam War, over 60,000 veterans committed suicide. So it would be nice if you mention about this. And that number is staggering. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up.